We back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Hello, 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 hello. Oh, okay, stream has started. Let's go. Mm, YouTube live control panel. All right. Okay. Yeah. I got everything sorted. Got the chat. I got the chat. Log into chat. I don't need to chat. What? Okay. Okay. Chat working. Does the chat need to be talking? Okay. Frequency right, everything good. I'm honestly just going to react to some YouTube videos, play some video games, and enjoy life. Enjoy life as I always do. Mm, yeah. Um, Chat frequency. Yeah, that's for me. All right. My Wi-Fi crashing out on my phone, but it's fine. Mm, 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 mm. You know what? I might. I want to play some NBA, but I have played Among Among Us a lot on my phone, and I do need to install it. Can I install this via this? Uh-oh. Um. Okay. I have to download Among Us. Okay. That's fine. Wait, I don't know what this is. I don't want to start downloading stuff. Um, is it on Steam? I don't know if I have Steam, so that's going to be a bit tricky. Among Us, but why do you have to pay for Among Us? Nah, boy, I am not going to pay for Among Us. Nah, I'm sorry, bro. I think paying for, um, what is this? Suggestion? Why do I have to open Studio? Okay. No, I think like having Among Us on the, oh, nah, bro. I don't want to get viruses. Uh-oh. Mm. Ah, you have to buy it on Steam. Eh, mm, mm-mm. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's something online, but I think I am then just going to react to YouTube. As a videos, just relax, chill out for a bit, and maybe get some chats. Some people in chat having live streams in a bit. So oh, Mr. Moj, Mr. Moj, Mr. Moj. That's a new video. Why the Pirate King always has two wings. Let's
Be
react.
slick with new got to be glued wax
Okay.
stick. Yes, queen. for every style.
Hold up.
No crunch and all hair types. Slick looks on the go.
Yeah.
Be slick with new Got to Be Glued wax stick.
Also, I'm going to be
Zet je
playing
slaapmodus aan.
NBA 2K
Want bij
in the
Swiss Sense
background.
heb je altijd
You
de
know
beste
why?
deal.
Because I can.
Every Yonko has 3 top commanders. Kaido had King, Queen,
Alright.
and Jack. Big Mom. Every
Alright. Recording that, recording. Everything recording.
Yonko has 3 top commanders.
Let go.
Kaido had King, Queen, and Jack. Big Mom had Katakuri, Smoothie, and Cracker. Whitebeard had Marco, Jozu, and Vista. And Shanks has Ben, Beckman, Lucky Root, and Yasop. But Luffy only has Zoro and Sanji. It seemed like Luffy was missing something. Didn't he need 3? Many readers had even begun to argue that Jinbei had actually broken up the iconic monster trio, and that now the new trio...
Nah. Don't disrespect Sanji like that. Sorry, Luffy, my baby. But don't disrespect Sanji. Don't disrespect Sanji like that, bruh.
trio was Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei as Luffy's 3 commanders, just like the other Yonko. But everyone forgot one thing, which is that Luffy is not supposed to be a mere Yonko. Luffy is aiming for something much higher. Luffy is going to be Pirate King, and that means
King
that
of
there
the
was
world.
only one model that ever mattered for the Straw Hats, which is the Roger Pirates. And Roger's crew, like Luffy's, clearly had quality over quantity. Luffy was never going to have 3 commanders below him because he has something far superior, 2 wings who can actually stand shoulder to shoulder alongside him, just like Roger did. Gold Roger, Silver's Rayleigh, and Scopper Gaban were the original monster trio, because it's no coincidence that the strongest crew structure that can actually take one to the top of the pirate world is not one where the captain is far ahead and has 3 commanders trailing behind in the distance. The strongest model is one where the captain has actually recruited similarly extraordinary fighters who can individually be legends in their own right, but choose instead to stand side by side with the captain. The structure of a captain and 2 wings is the hallmark of a Pirate King caliber crew, whereas a captain and 3 commander structure is going to leave one at mere Yonko level potential. This is because there is a significant thematic message that Oda is saying with these crew structures, and why the traditional structure of the Yonko crews fundamentally limits the heights that they can reach. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. But first, if you want to use a high quality VPN for less than $3 a month, Surfshark is offering that deal for my viewers right now. Surfshark VPN is the sponsor for this video, and in case you don't know what VPNs are, most people are using VPNs when they're online now to 2 years stronger than all of the Yonko first mates today. It isn't even a remotely close comparison. While characters like Marco, King, and Katakuri are certainly impressive, Rayleigh is literally a living legend. He's apparently someone so infamous that everyone has heard his name, and even Straw Hats from East Blue considered him to be a legend. Outside of Whitebeard, even Straw Hats from East Blue considered him to be a legend. Outside of Whitebeard, even the Yonko themselves are not as legendary as Rayleigh, as generally most of the Straw Hats did not know the names of any of the other Yonko until they learned about them much later in their adventures, whereas apparently everyone from every corner of the globe knows of Rayleigh's greatness. So forget being compared to Yonko first mates, Rayleigh's legend literally surpasses that of the Yonko themselves. Completely understandable considering the heights that Luffy's own right hand is chasing. Even many of the strongest characters revere Rayleigh's strength as legendary. Garp literally puts Rayleigh in the same category as Whitebeard himself. Blackbeard, even as a Yonko, was absolutely terrified of having to fight Rayleigh and backed down simply based on Rayleigh's reputation, despite Blackbeard having no fear of characters like Marco and Law. We even saw that an extremely old Rayleigh who hadn't even used a sword in years was still able to hold back an admiral, essentially establishing that even far past his prime, Rayleigh is still capable of matching and surpassing the best feats of first mates in their prime today. So all of this Rayleigh hype aside, the big question is, why is this? Roger and Whitebeard were equals, but when it comes to their first mates, there is an absolutely gigantic gap, and that applies to all Yonko first mates. In general, Rayleigh's status and reputation actually seems to be a lot closer to his captains than any other Yonko's first mates' status and notoriety seems to be to their respective captains. Well, it actually makes a lot of sense when you consider Whitebeard's philosophy when it came to structuring his crew. See, Whitebeard had a similar extraordinary figure that he could have chosen as his right hand in Odin. Right off the bat from their very first meeting, we saw that Odin was genuinely a monster similar to Whitebeard himself. Odin went on to become a legend in his own right, with news of his strength even reaching Roger.
Tatum.
Odin later on taking Kaido solo, and Odin's reputation being known by the strongest Marines even 20 years after his death. Odin is the kind of man who goes far beyond what a first mate would traditionally be. A man who would be a legend in his own right, much like Rayleigh was established to be. But the difference between Roger and Whitebeard is that Whitebeard specifically did not want men like that in his crew. Whitebeard believed that too many strong figures disrupts the sense of hierarchy that is supposedly necessary for a crew to properly function. Notably, after Odin left, Whitebeard never again took on a man like Odin, until Whitebeard at the end of his lifespan began finally raising his own successor, Ace. And as we saw, Ace, due to his own extraordinary potential, actively rebelled against Whitebeard for a long time in a manner that none of Whitebeard's other subordinates ever would. And so this is the biggest difference. The Yonko generally want a clear sense of hierarchy to their crew, whereas the Pirate Kings, Luffy and Roger, look for those who can actually stand alongside them. This desire for hierarchy is precisely what limits the Yonko, ironically, because not only is a man like Rayleigh or Odin far stronger than typical Yonko commanders, the Pirate Kings, Luffy and Roger, actually have two of these types of wings. That's right, it's not just Rayleigh and Zoro, Scopper and Sanji are right there as well. It has been made clear that Scopper was on similar footing to Rayleigh, not just from how he's been described, but also from how we saw them in action together when facing Odin. Both of them equally prepared to take him on. While Scopper doesn't seem to be quite as well known as Rayleigh, as he doesn't seem to be a household name like Rayleigh, Scopper's actual strength still puts him right up there alongside Rayleigh and Roger. And so this is what really makes Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji as a dynamic have such high-end potential, just like the original Pirate King's crew did. It's only with Roger's crew do you hear of Roger's subordinates also being grouped together with Roger himself as a trio, whereas with the lesser Yonko crews, the captain is never being grouped with his commanders. Rather, the subordinates tend to make up a distant, separate trio themselves. It is inherently much more formidable to have a crew where there is a genuine right and left-hand man that is actually close enough to the captain to make a trio dynamic with the captain. I also believe that as we got further in the story, readers began to believe that there was supposed to be a larger gap between Zoro and Sanji and their captain than actually exists, simply because readers saw the gaps between other Yonko and their subordinates, completely forgetting that the monster trio dynamic does not have to mirror the dynamic of other groups. In fact, it is precisely because Zoro and Sanji are so much stronger than a traditional number 2 or number 3 would be, that the Straw Hats have the capacity to surpass all other crews. Readers often conflate the fact that Luffy's opponents are always significantly stronger than Zoro and Sanji's opponents with the notion that Luffy himself is far ahead of Zoro and Sanji, while ignoring the key point that Zoro and Sanji also always defeat their opponents far easier than Luffy does. For instance, yes, Lucci was far stronger than Kaku and Jaibura. However, Zoro one-shotted Kaku as soon as Zoro used his power-up Ashura, and Sanji two-shotted Jaibura as soon as Sanji used his power-up Diablo Jambe, meaning Zoro and Sanji, post-power-ups, are also far stronger than Kaku and Jaibura. If you really want to compare their performance to Luffy, you could easily flip the conversation and talk about Luffy versus Blueno. Blueno is far weaker than Kaku and Jaibura, and yet Gear 2nd Luffy took notably much longer to defeat Blueno than Ashura Zoro did with Kaku or Diablo Jambi Sanji did with Jaibura. On top of this, Luffy also did about the same in his base form against Blueno as Zoro and Sanji did in their base forms against Kaku and Jaibura respectively. Again, despite Kaku and Jaibura being far stronger than Blueno. So at literally no point in Enies Lobby is Oda ever really implying that Luffy is now magically far ahead of Zoro and Sanji. Luffy got a more extended showcase of his power-up because he got to fight the final boss, because that's always Luffy's role, but Oda also showed us that Zoro and Sanji, post their respective power-ups, are far stronger than the number 2 and number 3 of the enemy group. Because, ultimately, Zoro and Sanji are not supposed to be that far behind Luffy. They are not traditional subordinates. This dynamic was further supported by their extremely similar performances against the Pacifista. Again, yes, Luffy ultimately got the finishing blow, he is the strongest at the end of the day, but Sanji and Zoro also still did significant build-up damage and could each individually damage the Pacifista themselves. Fast forward to post-time skip, and even now we can see clearly that the gap between Luffy's opponents and Zoro and Sanji's opponents is not reflective of the gap between the trio themselves. Kaido is far stronger than King and Queen. Luffy had extreme difficulty against Kaido, and many would argue that by the end of their fight, Luffy was still not quite as strong as Kaido overall due to stamina issues. On the flip side, look at Zoro and Sanji. Once Zoro mastered Advanced Conqueror's Haki, he completely overwhelmed King. Once Sanji got Ifrit Jambe, he literally immediately defeated Queen. Once again, Zoro and Sanji's respective power-ups put them far ahead of their opponents, whereas Luffy at max strength only ended up just about on par with his opponent. Clearly, the dynamic between this trio has never been like that of the other Yonko and their commander's dynamic. The gap between Zoro and Sanji and their captain has always been a lot closer because they are written to fall into the Wings archetype, where they make up a trio alongside their captain rather than as their own separate trio of subordinates. If you dislike the implication that Zoro and Sanji are a lot closer to Luffy than other Yonko commanders are to their captains, then you simply don't care for good writing. Because this is not about power scaling, it's a message. The whole point is that this is what a Pirate King's crew should look like. Not just one legend and a bunch of followers. The Pirate King is legendary because he is able to bring other similarly legendary figures to his cause to help him. Figures like Luffy and Roger are genuinely able to make others with extraordinary potential such as Zoro, Rayleigh, Sanji, Scopper, Odin, and so on want to work under them. But first, it's the month of love, and we have the month of Kingdom and Kamaba. Also important thing, Luffy and Roger also have the personality to want to work with similarly extraordinary people. While Whitebeard was great enough to make even someone like Odin want to work under him, that dynamic ultimately was not preferable to someone like Whitebeard. Whitebeard simply made an exception for the time. Ordinarily, Whitebeard's right hand would be someone like Marco, who, while very strong, is no legend. And why is that? Why is Whitebeard's crew like this? Why are all Yonko crews like this? Well, here is the thematic brilliance of Oda's structuring of all the great crews, because everything takes place on a spectrum, and there's an important point being made regarding which crew structures have the most success. The rule is, the more authoritarian and hierarchical a Yonko crew's structure is, the larger the gap in strength will be between the captain and his top subordinates. On the far end of the spectrum, we have Yonko crews that have a very official structure, like the Beast Pirates, the Big Mom Pirates, and the Whitebeard Pirates. These crews have official ranks and titles such as Suite Commanders, Ministers, Knights, Rooks, Bishops, and so on, or Calamities, Tobiropo, Headliners, and so on. Or Whitebeard's 16 division commanders. All of these crews tend to function like very structured militia. All of them treat the captain as a military general in a sense and obey direct orders. And in all of them, there is a notable gap between the commanders and the boss, the Yonko. However, if we slide a little further down the spectrum, we have our first Yonko crew that is a little more informal. Yes, Shanks has officers technically, but the way they function seems to be a lot more loose and casual, and their dynamic with Shanks seems to be a lot bolder, with them often taking initiative themselves on what the crew should do, and in some ways treating their captain as an equal comrade. And notably, this is the Yonko crew that boasts the most renowned subordinates. Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo, and Yasop were specifically noted as being particularly strong even by the standards of a Yonko crew. However, they do still ultimately treat and refer to Shanks as the boss, so there is still a degree of formality and hierarchy.
There's still respect for Big Boy Shanks.
But then you slide a little further down the spectrum, and now you have Luffy and Roger's crew dynamics. From everything we've seen, the Straw Hats and the Roger Pirates are extremely loose and informal in terms of their hierarchy. In fact, any real sense of hierarchy is practically non-existent on a day-to-day basis. The crew will happily fight with and even literally physically assault their captain whenever they feel like. And it seems like only in truly serious situations does the captain pull rank and give orders. And so it's in these crews that we see the strongest subordinates, who are far closer in strength to their leader than is the norm in the other crews. These crews have two legitimate wings for the captain rather than far inferior henchmen. So do you see the trend? The more authoritarian the crew, the greater the gap in strength between the leader and the subordinates. However, the more freedom and equality the captain allows on their ship, the more room there is for subordinates that are closer to the captain in strength. It makes sense, as Oda's messaging has always been that the truly strong are unlikely to subjugate themselves to another. Someone like Zoro would never allow himself to be commanded day to day by someone else. But in a crew that is more free-flow, where a captain generally does not impose authority, a strong individual would feel less repressed serving another, as the ability to exercise independence and even directly challenge the captain's way of thinking is clearly a requirement for extraordinary individuals. However, even if day-to-day Luffy and Roger are completely relaxed with their crews, Luffy and Roger still enforce their authority and firmly pull their weight as captain when needed. And that
Yeah, bro. Buddy healed.
That part is still important, as Oda is most certainly not saying that crews should never have hierarchy, because on the far end of the spectrum we then have the Rocks pirates. Rocks had by far the strongest subordinates ever, commanding Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki, and numerous other legends. It required the combined forces of the Roger Pirates and Garp and likely the Gods Knights to defeat them. While Rocks had accumulated the strongest subordinates in history, look at that. The crew was also by far the least organized and cohesive in history, with Rocks as a captain not even holding any true authority over all of them. They were all just in it to do whatever they wanted, and they seemed to straight up disrespect him as a captain. The crew was so dysfunctional with so many powerhouses and so little authority held by the captain that Whitebeard's experiences with this crew convinced him that a crew could not function with multiple extraordinary individuals. That is where his philosophy of crew structure stems from. And interestingly, that is likely why the traditional Yonko crew structure that we see of Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom's crews is so similar in reliance on hierarchy, with none of these Yonko having any subordinates who are remotely close to their level, likely because they are all former Rocks Pirates members who have seen what happens when there are too many powerhouses and too little authority held by the captain. So the problem is that while an extremely free-flowing crew where the captain doesn't hold that much authority can attract the strongest members, at the same time, when the situation demands, the captain needs to be able to command his subordinates in order for the crew to function. That is the key difference. While Luffy and Roger are also very free-flowing with their crew ordinarily and allow them to exercise great independence, Luffy and Roger are also still stronger than their crew by a large enough margin, and they carry enough authority that they're always able to command their crew's respect and obedience when the need arrives. So essentially, the more firm the hierarchy and structure, the more authority one chooses to display as a captain, the weaker the subordinates you will have. While the more freedom you allow as a captain, the stronger subordinates you can have. But then the catch is that you can't go too far to that extreme because you still ultimately need to be able to command your crew. Because Rocks is technically not even the furthest end of the spectrum, Buggy is. Cross Guild is the only Yonko crew where it's a literal alliance of equals, and so Buggy actually crosses over the threshold where even though he is technically captain in name, his quote-unquote subordinates are actually straight up far stronger than him, and Buggy has zero ability to command them. So the message here is balance. The Straw Hats and the Roger Pirates aren't as hierarchical and rigid as the Yonko. Luffy and Roger encourage more freedom and independence, and that's precisely why they're able to have such strong wings at their side rather than commanders who are far below them. But at the same time, Luffy and Roger can still act as firm captains at the end of the day, who do enforce authority and command their subordinates when needed, unlike Rocks, who acquired the strongest subordinates imaginable with a completely free-flow crew structure, but in doing so he also lost the ability to command them. There needs to be some gap between the leader and the rest, both in terms of strength and authority, in order to maintain the integrity of the crew. The Straw Hats and the Roger Pirates are the ultimate model for what a truly ideal crew structure is that can reach the level of Pirate King. The ideal middle ground between authoritarian leadership and absolute freedom, wherein they can draw similarly extraordinary individuals to their side as the ultimate subordinates, while still maintaining their position as the clear number one that must be followed. So let me know in the comments below what you think of the two-wing structure. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like and subscribe. And if you want to get my extended thoughts on the most notable Rayleigh feat that actually suggests that he could have had Pirate King potential himself, you can get my extended thoughts by supporting me on Patreon, link in the description below. And make sure to get your amazing deal for Surfshark VPN for less than $3 a day and an extra 4 months free at surfshark.com/more. Link in the description below, or just hit the QR code.
Hold on, bro. Is my microphone on? Microphone is on. Alright. Cool little video. Mr. Mosh always got some heat. No, let me see. It was well, one game destroys your career. Yeah, Swish County. Swish County.
Easier than ever to get heard and get paid on SoundCloud. Simply upload your tracks, and with just a few clicks,
The NBA can offer you a world The NBA can offer you a world unlike any other profession, due to the
Yep.
levels you must reach to make it there. But after one miserable game, these players were never the same, starting with J.R. Smith, where you all know what happens.
Yep.
Yes, we're talking about that. Going into the 2018 NBA Finals, this was like the worst finale to a TV show ever. The Warriors and Cavs were the rivalry of the decade with 4 consecutive Finals matchups, the last of which was easily the biggest snooze fest of them all. After Golden State gave Cleveland the belt to ass in 2017, this Cavs team was quite a bit worse after having lost Kyrie Irving in a trade to Boston. The Cavs had no chance in hell to win this series, but at the end of Game 1, it looked like the Cavaliers had a chance to shock the world. The two were neck and neck the whole game, coming down to late game free throws with George Hill at the line. After Kevin Durant completely whiffed a box out, J.R. Smith with an abnormal 6 rebounds had just grabbed the biggest board of his life and gave himself an easy look at the basket for the game. Until, what in the world was J.R. thinking?
Cavs, J.R. Smith brings it back out, throws it to Hill. Hill shot blocked. And we'll go to overtime. You get the feeling J.R. Smith thought they had the lead. He didn't know the.
Well, to this day, we don't exactly know. He's claimed his reasoning as he thought the Cavs were up in his initial response, which could very well be the reason, but possibly after some of the pushback he got from the brain lapse, his story changed. Later, he claimed he thought the Cavs were going to call a timeout because he wasn't in a position to score with KD protecting the rim. I mean, maybe he was wanting to shift the blame away from himself, which I couldn't even blame him for if true, because the volume of hate and mockery he was receiving was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this was being labeled the biggest mess up in finals history, which isn't much of an exaggeration. After that, JR stated he thought the Warriors were going to foul him. Really, I don't know exactly what was going through his head. If I had to guess, I really don't think this dude knew the score. Just knowing the Henny God's game, he has no problem shooting the ball.
Oh, damn.
That's for sure. But regardless, in terms of the result of Game 1 and the impact on JR's reputation, the damage was done. The Cavaliers went on to get spanked in overtime, and after this point, is back to belt to ass all series long, with the Warriors outright sweeping the Cavaliers. JR played like absolute ass all series long, shooting 32% from the field, and after this slip up, honestly, this was basically the end of J.R. Smith's career. JR would play poorly the next season after LeBron's departure, scoring 7 a game on 34% from the field, and after losing his starting spot, JR was asked to leave the Cavaliers just 20 games into the season. The Cavs looked for trade options for literally a year in hopes of dumping off his money for a pick in contract swap type moves, but JR after his slip up went from a starting caliber player on an NBA Finals team to a guy that no team wanted anything to do with. I mean, J.R. Smith was declining at this time, and had this happened to a Knicks or Nuggets J.R. Smith, you can bet your ass he would have gotten another spot. But it's safe to say this moment may have ruined his reputation around the league and hurt his chances of being one of the few remaining veteran mentors in the NBA. Other than a brief stunt with the 2020 Lakers, in which he did win a ring, albeit being the guy who did no work in the class project, J.R. Smith's finals blunder was essentially the end of his career altogether. Now, this slip up was mean to shit, and it was funny for the most part.
Yeah,
J.R. Smith
it was
is
funny.
a very memed on guy altogether, but for the most part, people don't really hate
Nah, bro.
JR. It's like
The J.R. Smith finals memes, they were legendary. They were absolutely legendary.
one of the bigger fan favorites in NBA history. But when he combined the non-stop joking with some legitimate hate, created a wave of attention that weighed very heavily on his shoulders and dragged him into a dark, dark world. I believe I've recovered from it, but I ain't gonna lie, bro. I used to dream about that. Like, I was in a depressed state, because I really thought, this is why I'm not in the league. I used to really think that, damn, after all these highlights I gave these people, you tell me I got talents, I got this, I got that, off of one play, now all of a sudden, I don't have talent no more. I'm not any good. It's hard to not feel bad for JR, with an uglier exit from the NBA than he would have liked. A lot of people seem to struggle to really find their purpose after taking away the one thing they've excelled at since they were children. And even though over the years, JR certainly did give us a show to watch like he said, and it's unfortunate that after years of playing at a relatively high level, this one slip up is going to be attached to his legacy forever. It's easy to feel bad for JR a bit here, which cannot be said about Andrea Bargnani, who is despised
Andrea Bargnani, bro.
by
Who? Who is this, Unk?
Every fan base who had to watch this guy suit up. Andrea Bargnani is basically a 7-foot Andrew Wiggins who never had a career revival on the Golden State Warriors, rather just basically buried his relevance and legacy into the ground once he was freed from the Toronto Raptors. Now, Bargnani was drafted first overall in the pretty below average 2006 draft class and is largely considered one of the biggest draft busts in NBA history, which is kinda true but kinda not depending on how you define the word. In his 3 best years, Bargnani averaged from 17 to 21 points per game on slightly below average efficiency. This dude was basically all talent, no effort, chucking bad shots on a shitty Raptors squad,
All talent, no
relying
effort.
solely on his shooting touch at 7 feet tall, while being a Charmin soft fucking baby. I mean, I'm sorry to anyone who had to watch this guy because I would have broken my TV 6 times over if this dude had came to my Timberwolves at any point. Despite his pretty incredible offensive versatility with good foot speed, a nice jump shot, and good footwork, this dude had a world of talents. I mean, he was the first overall pick for Christ's sake, but this is one of those guys whose selfishness and laziness not only killed his career, but murdered every team he was on. I mean, despite being a 7-footer with a frame that wasn't paper thin, he wasn't built like Chet or anything like that, and this guy still was allergic to getting rebounds. Despite playing over 30 minutes per game for much of his career, this guy only managed to grab 6 boards a game once in his career. The Raptors had basically given up on Bargnani by age 27 and shipped him to New York, who were desperate to make a splash after a 55-win season, who were willing to send over a very healthy return in Marcus Camby, Steve Novak, and Q Rich, as well as picks. But all this trade really did was completely impoverish the Knicks during the Carmelo era. Bargnani and Carmelo
I got free
was
watches.
such
Hey, yo. I got free people watching in the chat. 4 views. Hold on. Welcome everybody to the stream. Paradise FFD, you know what we do. You know how we do it. 3 people watching. God bless.
terrible fit on the floor.
Reacting to YouTube videos while I play some NBA 2K. As you do. Euro.
That they fell 18 wins down to 37 and 45. Well, their only blessing was having the anti-Bargnani and Tyson Chandler to clean up his mess. This dude at 7 feet tall was just doing cardio, grabbing 5 rebounds in 30 minutes. When asked why he clocked such poor rebounding numbers, Bargnani responded, "The game's called basketball, not rebound ball." When asked in a more serious way, Bargnani chalked up his rebounding woes to laziness. Literally, laziness. "I have the frame to compete on the glass, but sometimes I get lazy." I mean, we all knew this, but never in my life have I heard a player actually admit to it. The Andrea Bargnani saga in New York is basically summed up by one play against the Milwaukee Bucks that was effectively his last straw.
Corner, Anthony, one-on-one with Antetokounmpo, shoots over 2. Offensive rebound, Chandler to Bargnani. What is he doing? What is he doing, folks? Why
What
would
is
he
he
shoot the
doing?
ball? Why? Andrea Bargnani.
I have no idea why the hell this dude is pulling this shot up to with the shot clock off, but if this doesn't show you the selfishness of this dude, I don't know what will. This play basically marked the point that the Knicks wrote him off completely. After the shot, his minutes were cut from 31 to 22, while in the next season he would basically end his career trying to leap over somebody like he isn't Andrea Bargnani. I mean, you might think that I'm grilling this dude too hard, but everyone who had him saw it. The he could be cold effect kept him in the league for a while, and his shitty attitude and low IQ made him quite the hated player and teammate in the meantime. Now, Bargnani is just another afterthought of a first overall pick gone wrong, but Ben Simmons, on the other hand, is one of the weirdest
Ben Simmons, bro. Ben Simmons, bruh. If you know, bro, what you know about that Ben Simmons, bro? Oh my God.
case studies in the NBA. Now, this story is beaten to shit, so we'll keep this part short, but it is completely impossible to leave Ben Simmons off this list. In the 2021 NBA playoffs, the Philadelphia 76ers faced off against the young and hungry Atlanta Hawks in what was supposed to be a routine series for the top-seeded Sixers. Instead, it turned into one of the most humiliating collapses in franchise history. At the center of this disaster was Ben Simmons. His career-altering moment came in Game 7, a single possession that became the lasting image of his downfall. Going into the playoffs, the Eastern Conference had 3 true contenders: the Bucks, the Nets, and the Sixers. Philly finished as the 1 seed, and anything short of conference finals would have been a massive disappointment. But as the series against Atlanta progressed, concerns about Simmons' confidence and offensive struggles became impossible to ignore. Even before Game 7, his hesitancy was glaring. He had been passive all series, scoring just 8 and 6 points in Game 5 and Game 6. points. His free throw struggles were especially brutal, as he missed 10 in Game 5 alone, contributing to a blown 20-point lead. When asked about his shooting woes, his response, "I think it's mental. I have no idea why my shooting dropped off, only fueled doubts about his ability to handle the pressure." Then came Game 7. While Joel Embiid also struggled, committing 8 turnovers, Simmons took the full brunt of the criticism after the play. Late in the fourth quarter, he had a wide-open dunk, but instead passed the ball to Matisse Thybulle, who was immediately fouled. The decision baffled everyone. It was the moment that defined his tenure in Philadelphia and ultimately ended it. After the loss, the backlash was immediate. Even his own teammates and coach Doc Rivers publicly questioned his ability to lead a winning team. It was a death blow to Simmons' standing in the organization. From that point on, his career unraveled. He skipped training camp, got suspended, and eventually sat out the entire following season, citing back issues, though most believed it was more about his deteriorating mental state than his physical health. The Sixers fined him over $10 million for missed practices and games, making him the most fined player in NBA history. A midseason trade to Brooklyn in 2022 was supposed to offer a fresh start, but injuries and confidence issues persisted. His production nosedived, and despite being just 27 years old, he no longer resembles an NBA caliber player. Chris Brickley really tried hitting us with the offseason workout videos again and said that this is back to the Rookie of the Year 3 times in a row prime Ben Simmons. Simmons went out there and averaged 6 fucking points for the 3rd season in a row. I mean, I have no idea how much that back injury affected his play and how poorly that ending with the Sixers due to the
Ben Simmons don't give a fuck. Ben Simmons don't give a fuck. Bro, he earned almost like 300 million in the NBA, bro. He don't give a fuck. Ben Simmons do not give a fuck, bro. And you can't really blame him. Of course, but it's love of the game, love of this. Bro, he got this. He got money for centuries, bro. He don't care.
The pass heard around the world hurt his confidence and hindered his
Listen, the older I get, bro, the more I understand Ben Simmons.
ability on the floor, but the combination of the two made for one of the worst fall-offs in NBA history. I'm sure people would be more than willing to give him some sympathy, given how elite he was prior to the injury and how poorly the Sixers had handled it. I mean, they really threw his ass under the bus after that pass, but acting like a teenage girl at practice and refusing to shoot the ball after all of these years makes him quite the hard guy to root for. Making $6 million a year per point scored, Ben Simmons is out there crippling the economy. If you can't afford eggs in Brooklyn, blame Ben Simmons. And honestly, once his contract is up, I have no clue what the market for Ben Simmons is going to look like at all. Because ever since that play, Ben Simmons has really been a menace to the NBA. I mean, really, if this dude just learned to shoot the damn ball, all of his problems would mostly go away. But I guess that didn't go too well for Denzel Valentine either. Denzel Valentine is...
Well, what happened to Denzel Valentine, bro? What happened to Denzel Valentine, bro? Bro, I remember Denzel Valentine hype. Denzel Valentine hype, nigga. If you know, you know, bro. Uh-oh.
Kind of a story of how staying in college when you're not quite ready for the NBA can be beneficial, because this dude went pretty far for a guy with his talent level. Denzel played 4 years, he improved very steadily from 5 games close to 20 by his senior season. Denzel would go 14th overall in the 2016 NBA draft, mostly due to his ability to shoot the ball at 44% from deep. But really, this guy was just a volume scorer that didn't really pass or defend too well. Frankly, being a volume scorer isn't going to get you very far in the NBA when you have the talent level to defend too well. Frankly, being a volume scorer isn't going to get you very far in the NBA when you have the talent level of, well, Denzel Valentine. This dude had a chance to be a good role player in the NBA just due to his shooting stroke, but really when at his best, this guy was putting up 10 a game on 41% shooting. He was never really NBA level, and one play will forever be tied to his name as the one that destroyed his career.
Butler pulls up, missed it badly there. Less than a minute to go.
No.
Oh my goodness, Valentine!
No.
Whoa,
No.
That is not the shot.
I mean, from Jimmy missing badly just for Denzel
Bro,
to miss the basket
what
by
is
10
happening?
feet, this was the most comically timed, brain-dead moments I've ever seen in the NBA. Even the commentators couldn't help but to absolutely cook his ass for pulling a 30-foot pull-up jumper, and he really did deserve it. For the season, Denzel put up 6 a game, but after this was severely cut down on minutes, scoring just 4 a game on the off chance that he actually got into the game. Denzel played just one more year before his career was over, and really all he left left us with was this 30-foot air ball to remember him for. I mean, this kind of shit is why AAU needs to be banned forever. 5 years after he stated he wanted to win the MVP award and win Chicago a ring, this dude was having to explain why he just took a 30-footer that airballed by 6 feet, down 5 with 50 seconds left. I mean, apparently, Denzel felt that since he just smacked his last 3 balls, the right play was to walk down and shoot from the hash. Denzel was never really great just due to his play style. He could never really play a role in the NBA and was likely out of the door anyways, but this kind of late game mental lapse just writes you off as a low IQ player, as Valentine would rack up DNPs playing just one final year in the NBA. Denzel's bad shot wasn't exactly the cause of the death
Why
of his
would you
career,
think
just more
contesting
so the
mid-range?
nail in the coffin. When talking about one bad game defining a legacy, John Starks may be the greatest example. I was still shitting my pants by the time John Starks was wrapping up his NBA career, but when you hear about his legacy, you get some mixed perceptions. From overrated to underrated to legitimate star to just role player, John Starks' legacy is a bit weird, but really, if he hadn't put together one of the biggest choke jobs in NBA history, things would have went a lot different. John Starks and the New York Knicks had a tough job throughout the 1990s, having lost to MJ's Bulls in the 1993 conference finals after having put together a crazy 60-win season. These Knicks were deep, they were talented, and they were hard-nosed as hell. Really, they were perfect for 1990s basketball. So when Michael Jordan would leave the NBA to go play baseball and gamble, this opened the door for a few fringe contenders to now become real threats, and very few benefited as much as the New York Knicks. John Starks had broken out a bit in the 1994 season, earning his first and only All-Star selection with 19 points per game as a second option behind Patrick Ewing. At 57 and 25 this season in an MJ-less league, the Knicks' 1994 campaign was their best chance at a championship since the 1970s, and even still, it certainly wasn't easy, but after taking down Pippen's Bulls in 7, and Reggie Miller's Pacers in 7 as well, believe it or not, but the Madison Square Garden was actually home to an NBA Finals. The stage was set for a duel between two of the best bigs that the game has ever seen, in Patrick Ewing and Hakeem Olajuwon, but throughout 6 games, John Starks was dropping 19 a game, which was massive for a series in which neither team ever scored over 100 points. Throughout games 4, 5, and 6, Starks had put up double-digit fourth quarters, resulting in a turnaround from a 2-1 deficit, to just narrowly failing to put away the Rockets in game 6, which of course meant that one game would decide the fate of both teams and the entirety of the 1994 season. Now, championships were certainly extremely hard to come by throughout the Bulls' prime, which left plenty of all-time greats ringless, and these two teams were looking to capitalize on the opportunity in front of them. And on June 22nd, 1994, we would see one of the wildest Game 7 choke jobs in NBA history. With the stage set in Houston, Texas, the show was underway. The Knicks coach had all the confidence in the world in not only his Knicks, but John Starks in particular, when talking to his friend who would utter a sentence that will forever live on in infamy before game time. Well, old buddy, I know at least 3 people who are going to show up tonight. You, me, and John. Well, John came out a bit slow, but in fairness, the rest of the team, as well as the other team, were a bit sloppy as well. Defensive intensity mixed with offensive sloppiness resulted in a pretty low-scoring half of basketball with a tight 45-43 finish. John Starks had battled a bit of foul trouble throughout the half and had struggled to take the lid off the basket, shooting just 1 for 5 from the field with a pair of free throws. Now, Starks was in his head a bit. He couldn't sleep the nights prior. He couldn't forget that one shot that was tipped by Olajuwon at the end of Game 6 that could have won them a championship, and rather than clearing his head over the shaky half in the locker room, Starks sat and soaked up the negative thoughts and pressures into a downward spiral that would lead to his worst half of basketball that he's ever played. Starks went out there and tried casting up a 3-ball from the corner. Long. Okay. Well, Starks can score the ball pretty well from all over the floor. Next, Starks is taking the ball to the rim. Oh, right. Hakeem Olajuwon is the best shot blocker ever. Well, they have Ewing to score the rock. John Starks can play his role defensively and feed hotter hands. Well, shit. His matchup, Vernon Maxwell, is torching this dude with the hottest hand on the floor. With the 63-60 finish to the third quarter, this thing was close, and really the bad shooting night from John Starks was the only thing that was keeping the game close. But as we saw the past 3 games, fourth quarter Starks was
they should have won, bro. New York should have won.
But sadly, this wasn't any other night. Starks starts the quarter getting to the stripe, knocking down a pair of free throws, and started to strike some fear in Houston fans who had seen Starks perform all series long. When it appeared that Starks may have started to get some momentum on his side, Starks airballs a 3-ball so fucking bad that it took all of the potential confidence that he had. I mean, this was like a yard away from the basket. Next play, John Starks open 3-ball, rims out. Another off-ball screen, John Starks open 3-ball, clink. Players on the other team went as far to say he was shooting a medicine ball ball, and it only got worse. John Starks transition 3 ball. Nope, long rebound and easy bucket the other way. 1 for 12 and 0 for 7 from 3. John Starks is playing piss poor to where even the announcers are begging him to stop shooting. But with 5 minutes to go, Pat Riley let his guard shoot through the slump. Starks went on to miss another 3 ball. Holy hell, he was in his head so bad. He was passing up open shots before finally, after an offensive rebound, Starks got his second field goal of the night. The lid is open, right? Well, after a 5th foul and Maxwell smacking another 3 ball in his face, Starks clinked 1, 2, 3 more 3 balls before the Rockets closed out the game 84-90. Holy hell, this is one of the worst choke jobs in pro sports. I feel bad that this one poor game is so legacy defining, but in a 6-point game that decided his season, Starks shot 2 for 18 and 0 for 11 from
Damn.
3. This really did heavily influence the result of the season. Starks was supposed to be the king of the 4th quarter and now is more of the poster child for a late game choke job. Starks' career as a star level player, or even a starter in the league, quickly diminished as the Knicks would never reach this level again with Ewing and Starks. And John's production would very swiftly and consistently decline despite being just 28 years old. John Starks' story is really the worst horror movie for any professional athlete. But in the very next season, Nick Anderson's infamous free throws may have been even worse. On June 7th, 1995, Nick Anderson's NBA career took a devastating turn. It was Game 1 of the NBA Finals, and his Orlando Magic were on the
Nick Anderson free throws.
brink of securing a crucial victory over the Houston Rockets. With 8.5 seconds left and a 3-point lead, Anderson stepped to the free throw line. One make would all but seal the game. Instead, one moment would kill the Magic's momentum and his confidence forever. For that night, Nick Anderson was the heart of the Orlando Magic. A standout at the University of Illinois, he dominated in his 2 college seasons, averaging 18 points and 7.9 rebounds as a sophomore, before declaring for the 1989 NBA Draft. The Magic, as an expansion team at the time, made Anderson their first ever draft pick, selecting him 11th overall. As a rookie, he showed promise, averaging 11.5 a game, and over the next few seasons, his numbers surged to nearly 20 a game, making him a key figure in the franchise's rise. The additions of Shaq and Penny Hardaway elevated the team to championship contention, but Anderson remained a foundational piece. The 1995 NBA Finals was supposed to be Orlando's arrival on the big stage. In Game 1, they held a commanding 20-point lead before Houston clawed back. Still, with 8.5 seconds remaining and a 110-107 lead, Anderson had a chance to close the door. His first free throw fell short. The Rockets had life. His second free throw missed again, but he grabbed his own rebound and was fouled once more. Another opportunity to redeem himself. The third attempt clanked off the back of the rim. The fourth, another miss. The Rockets won 120-118, stealing the game. In all of the Magic's confidence, they had never recovered, getting swept 4-0. Before those misses, Anderson was a respectable 70% free throw shooter, but after that game, his confidence was wrecked. His struggles at the line worsened, bottoming out at an abysmal 40% from 3 during the 96-97 season. I've been in that situation several times, but tonight, I just didn't have it. Why now? I just missed the free throws. Orlando head coach Brian Hill later admitted that Game 1 broke the team mentally. Anderson himself acknowledged how much it haunted him. I let it get to me mentally. I lost that dog in me. The dog was there, but there was no bite. Despite playing 13 seasons in the NBA and finishing as Orlando's all-time leading scorer at the time, Anderson's legacy is forever tied to that one game. His career, which had been on an upward trajectory, never fully recovered. That night, the Orlando Magic lost more than just the game, and for Nick Anderson, those 4 free throws changed everything. Make sure you subscribe. We're trying to hit 100K by the end of the year. It would really help me.
Damn. Yeah, I think that's how you can see like how much, how much it mental strength, bro. It matters. It's all mentality. It is all mentality. What really happened to the fattest NBA players now, bro? Nah, I'm good. Lucas' first game as a Laker voiceover. I'm dead.
Rams debut. We in here. Yeah, let's fucking go. I'm here. But not for long. Luka, the best teammate I ever had.
You sure about that, Brian?
Yeah. Yep. Come Luka, man. Y'all show him some respect. It's my favorite teammate. Y'all dap Luka up right now. Treat him like y'all treat me or end up like AD.
What's going on, guys? I'm glad to be here. What's up?
I ain't even played a game with him, and he's already my best teammate ever.
That's right.
Introducing the newest Laker,
Tatum.
Luka Doncic. This is what it all comes down to. This is exactly why I traded my nigga AD. It's a dream come true to play with Luka, so y'all make sure y'all treat him right. And Luka, don't you fit in? You fit the fuck out. You hear me?
I'll do my best. I get the rebound. Oh, LeBron.
Oh man, chemistry. Yeah, so I'm talking about Luka. Good job. So you happy? You happy I made that trade?
Of course.
Tatum. Tatum, a kind of crappy shot. I kind of want to play like click production video, just for the time being.
All right. So today we are back in 2003. The
Oh,
rookie
float
season
of
of
two
LeBron
people?
James. And I decided, you know what? Today in real life, Luka and LeBron will make their debut together as teammates. One of them is a 40-year-old man in his 20 whatever the hell season. And then there's Luka, who's like 25 or 26. So instead, what if we see them play together for an entire career starting back when LeBron actually just started his? So welcome to Cleveland with Big Z, Carlos Boozer, and yeah, let's see what the hell happens. Starting lineup will be Luka, Smush Parker, LeBron, Carlos Boozer, and Big Z. Not the most promising, but you know, we got a lot of time here. Well, season's over. Jason Kidd won MVP. LeBron wins Rookie of the Year, so he averaged 28, 6, and 6 with 2 steals and 2 blocks. Shoot, he might have won DPOI. He didn't, though. He makes the second team All-NBA. And Luka averaged 14, 7, and 7. So Luka in real life did a lot better. I mean, he averaged 7 rebounds and 7 assists. And he also shot 45% from 3. But yeah, obviously, he kind of had his share with LeBron. And LeBron just took the initiative, which is fair play. The All-Rookie first team looks even more legendary than it did in the first place now. I wonder who was on it as the 5th rookie back in the day. It was probably, I don't know, one of these guys. And Cleveland made the playoffs a year after making the number 1 over, or the number first pick. What the hell am I saying? Year after having the first pick, they have the 4th seed against Allen Iverson.
Boy, I better lock the fuck up in. Okay, free throws. Yeah, they're basically gonna foul me and shoot free throws. Scopper Gaban is not who we fought. Willie train Luffy.
Well, look who decided to finally show up. My boy, Scopper Gaban is finally here, and he is not exactly what I expected. But now that the left hand of the former Pirate King has been finally revealed, what is his actual plan for Luffy and the Straw Hats? And I'm kind of dying to know what you think, because I personally believe that he could be the key to unlocking Luffy's true powers that will help him defeat Imu and the Gorosei at the end of the story. But you know, what's maybe even more insane here, though, is that we might have finally gotten the clue that we needed to say that Scopper is the man marked by flames and has been the one hiding the final road cliff all along after all. But guys, let's start it off with an appreciation applause for Oda here, because I mean, he's giving us back-to-back absolute banger chapters here. I honestly kind of feel like if we didn't just get the lore drop of the century in the last chapter, then even more people would be going absolutely crazy about the reveal of Scopper freaking Gaban. And I mean, fans of the channel will know that this isn't just any character for me. This is my man, Scopper Gaban, my favorite unofficial character who we've never seen outside of any of the flashbacks so far, but he is the 3rd in command of the Roger Pirates. In other words, the man who was always hanging around on the same level as Roger and Rayleigh, and I've been literally waiting 500 chapters at this point to finally meet this man, and he is finally here. And let me tell you, we're gonna dive into everything that Scopper's arrival might mean for Luffy and the crew. Trust me, we're gonna get there, but first, I do want to know if you're all seeing the same comparisons here that I am with him, because obviously now it's more clear than ever that Roger, Rayleigh, and Scopper Gaban are just insanely closely paralleled with Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. I mean, we've seen the Luffy and Roger comparisons basically all throughout the story at this point. I don't think I even need to describe those to you. And then, of course, Zoro and Rayleigh are both the main swordsmen, first mates, and they both like to drink a lot, and they do like to sleep. What's even crazier is that now with Scopper's introduction, we now also know that both 3rd in commands are basically just love-struck fools. Though I will say, I mean, Rayleigh also kind of is that a little bit too. Which I will say is really wild. I never really expected Scopper Gaban would go around introducing himself as the missionary of love. Like what? but it just kind of seems to me like he's an older version of Sanji, who
Found out.
shockingly might be even less mature somehow. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Sanji will beg Skopper to train him to woo all the ladies of all the races around the world, because clearly Skopper knows what he's doing in that department, if you know what I mean. Now, what's absolutely wild, I think, is that somehow almost all of the important Roger pirates eventually have had a serious relationship with some women. If you want, they're kind of basically, to me, the most romantic characters and the most romantic crew in the entire story, because Roger had a baby with Portgas de Rouge, Rayleigh and Shaggy are an item, and then Shanks and Makino are pretty much basically confirmed to have their own child as well. But now we've confirmed that Skopper and Ripley are a match as well. So man, I don't know. I mean, I kind of wonder what they've all actually learned on Laugh Tale that made them all want to go out and get hitched. I mean, is the One Piece just a big collection of romance novels or something like that? I guess Buggy is the one who didn't get the message here, but then again, he didn't go. So I think that fits that theory perfectly. Jokes aside though, now that Skopper is finally here, we can officially start speculating on his true purpose here in Elbaf and for the rest of the story. And clearly, it's going to involve the Straw Hats one way or another, mainly Luffy, of course. I mean, remember, a couple of chapters ago, we even saw him basically waiting for them to finally arrive on the shore here back in chapter 1124, I think it was. So he must have had plans for Luffy to begin with, which goes along with our idea that all of the Roger pirates have been waiting at key locations along the Grand Line to prepare the one person who will find the One Piece and become the next Joy Boy. However, very much unlike Rayleigh, Skopper isn't gonna just walk up and become friends with the crew right here, clearly. He literally threw an axe at them, and now he's challenging Luffy to an all-out contest to take the key to Loki's chains. Now, that being said, let me be very clear here. I don't think anyone seriously thinks that Skopper is going to be a real enemy to the crew. I mean, if you do, let me know your reasoning, but it seems very obvious that Skopper just wants to basically test Luffy here, and that seems to be exactly what we're basically getting. Skopper is going to test Luffy's physical capabilities by playing cat and mouse with the key, which is, you know, this very typical classy shonen mentor type of trope, which is just look at Kakashi and Naruto, for instance. But what you might have missed in the chapter is that Skopper actually already gave Luffy a test of his true intentions a little bit earlier in the chapter. Because when you look at it right here, you can see that Skopper asks Luffy, well, when the worst thing happens with Loki, what would you actually do? And keep in mind that this is before Skopper decided to show Luffy's group where the key actually is. So I'm just gonna speculate here that if Skopper didn't actually like Luffy's answer in this scene to this question, he probably wouldn't even have shown them the secret treasure room to begin with, because why would he? And maybe even just blasted them straight out of the hole above the summoning circle right there as well. But let's back up a little bit more here for a moment, because I do have a really serious question for you. Do you think that Skopper wants to keep Loki chained up forever himself? Like, really? Is that really his goal, you think? Because if he really thinks that Loki is such a danger and will cause all kinds of terrible chaos and destruction when he's released, then why in the world would he even show Luffy this key? You know what I'm saying? Like, we already saw that they would—
It's One Piece. You're gonna show them the key because it's One Piece. Luffy gotta win. So that's it.
would never have found it to begin with, and we were told that giants who truly want to keep Loki locked up like Ja Rule would never tell anyone where it really is hidden. So then ask yourself, why did Skopper just very casually reveal the hidden location of this super important item? Well, it does kind of seem to be the obvious answer to me that Skopper actually does want Loki to be freed, but only by the right person under the right circumstances. And for me, that really makes me wonder, like, what plan Skopper has in store for Luffy and Loki together, but I think I might have potentially already figured out the reason. And it all kind of ties back into the Hurley text and the mural that we got in the last chapter, because we can see here on the left side of the mural that it depicts a very climatic battle. Now don't worry, I'm not gonna dive too deep into all of this. We just did a really big breakdown video for this, but the interesting thing is that we have a regular giant who's on
Okay.
Nika side, but then there's also this second larger giant with horns that I will say could look like an ancient giant, but also look a lot like Loki's. So to me, this could mean that in Luffy's eventual battle with Emu, he will not only have the giants as allies, but also some ancient giants or people with ancient giant blood who we now know are usually larger and have horns. Like Loki, for example, who we do know has ancient giant blood from his father's side. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that I think that Scopper knows this very prophecy and wants Loki to take part in the final war, but he also needs someone who can inspire and lead Loki into the right direction. And I mean, you can probably guess what I'm gonna say next here, but obviously that person is gonna be no one else but Luffy. But at the same time, then Luffy probably isn't quite ready for that fight at his current power level, since he wasn't able to defeat the Gorosei on Egghead Island as well. Which now leads me to what I think is Scopper's real purpose for this arc, what I hope at least, because basically I believe that just like Rayleigh, Scopper might be the key to unlocking the next level of powers for Luffy. And you might be asking, why in the world is this even necessary? Isn't Luffy already one of the strongest characters in the story at this point? And the answer is kind of, well, yes, kind of, but not really. And as we saw in Egghead Island, even Luffy can't really do anything and any real damage against the demonic powers of the Gorosei, for instance. That to me clearly means that he'll need to unlock a new level of power to win the final war against the world government and even be able to compete with the likes of Shamrock, the Gorosei, Shanks, and so on and so forth. Which to me means that just like Rayleigh helped Luffy train during the time skip, I think that Scopper might play a very similar role here in Elbaf before the true conflict of the final saga
Scopper training arc? Okay.
really can kick off. Now don't worry, I will get into a lot of detail about how I think that training could and will look possibly, but before that, I do think it's pretty important to discuss the timing of this as well. Because keep in mind here that Shamrock and Gunko are already in Elbaf, and they aren't exactly messing around right now. Like, we do know that they're on this mission to take control of the entire island of Elbaf and basically force the giants to serve the government. So it's not like Scopper and Luffy can just go on a long training arc right away right now. So I think it might be much more likely that this training might occur after the main conflict on Elbaf has actually been resolved. And if you think about it, this is basically exactly what happened with Rayleigh as well. Because Luffy, of course, didn't start his real training until the war at Marineford was already finished, where he wasn't strong enough to protect his brother Ace. And what's kind of crazy to think about, curious what you think, is that we could be getting pretty much a very similar setup for this training in Elbaf as well, because we do know that Luffy mostly gets stronger by fighting and then failing and then in the process learning something new. So I think it's very possible that Luffy is just straight up not strong enough yet to defeat someone like Shamrock or Gunko and whoever else they're calling right now to Elbaf, and if he does fail to defeat someone like the Holy Knights, then it could be the perfect motivation for him to get stronger by training together with Scopper. So that's kind of what I personally think, and this training will most likely happen after some tragic failure here on Elbaf, but I'm also very curious what you all think about the time of the training as well, because let's just assume that this training is going to happen at some point, and Scopper will be teaching the Straw Hats or even just Luffy something really important. Then the main question here, of course, is what will that training actually include? Is it going to be hockey, devil fruit powers, like something completely different potentially? But to tackle this question, let's start at something a little bit more simple, because while I don't really believe that this is the case, it is completely possible that Scopper only tells the Straw Hats some sort of new information, and that's then pretty much it. For example, let's say he could just give them the location of the final road poneglyph, or maybe he just tells them the secret to the Gorosei's demonic powers, you know, like teaching them what that actually is all about. You know, I'm kind of thinking that we could get something like another God Valley flashback, or some other flashback even possibly involving Roger and his crew, which, you know, always really nice and welcome to get. Oh yeah, and actually, now that I mention it, one thing I wanted to talk about, quick side note, where in the world are all the other Roger pirates? Like, in case you don't know, there are like 20 other named Roger pirates that we know who literally there is no information if they're alive.
They got hunted down by the world government. It was stated multiple times that the Roger pirates and anyone related or close to Roger was hunted down. So
Like, are they all dead, or are they just chilling in the world somewhere with the knowledge of the true history and no one really cares about it? Like, what's up with that? Are we gonna meet them all? Are they just never gonna be relevant? Kind of weird when you think about it. But hey, anyways, back to Scopper Gaban here. As much as I would like to see a longer training arc, some short conversation might be pretty much all that we have time for in this arc potentially as well. And if you don't believe me, just listen to why it's a real possibility that Scopper does potentially not even survive the Elbaf conflict to begin with. I mean, just picture for a minute what we already know about Shamrock's plan. We do know that right now he is targeting the giant children of Elbaf, and it just seems to be really clear to me that Scopper's son Colin will most likely get kidnapped. Can we agree on that? I mean, that seems like such a too good to not happen storyline here. And given what we've seen from Colon so far, he'll probably try to fight Shamrock or Gunko all on his own, even though he has absolutely no chance of winning this. And so to me, if Scopper's son would be in danger, it might lead to a Shamrock versus Scopper Gaban confrontation that I mean, this is just my gut feeling without knowing anything about Scopper's power level right now. I don't really see him winning at this point, because I mean, we did see Rayleigh admit that he can barely keep up with an Admiral and that he couldn't win against a Yonko like Blackbeard, at least at his current age. He probably could, like both of them when they were younger. But then if we assume that the top Holy Knights, like Shamrock, who's their leader, are the same or even more powerful than an Admiral or the Yonko, then there is a really good chance that Scopper would probably lose that fight. Pretty badly, actually, when we consider that level of power scaling here. So yeah, if Scopper dies here, then there's obviously no time whatsoever for a major training arc with him because he's dead, and whatever information he tells the Straw Hats before that would be pretty much all that we could get. But with that being said, we all do know Oda and that he just almost never kills off important characters, so Scopper, I think, don't worry, I kind of have a good feeling that probably you're just fine no matter what. I mean, just look at Saul here, I guess. He was fine. So while this is a possibility, and maybe this is just my personal opinion because I really love training arcs and want to see this happen, but I really do have a good feeling that we might be getting a real training session with Luffy, because clearly, let's be real, there is a lot potentially for Luffy to learn. And so you might just think that this is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, we've all seen training arcs in anime before, a lot. Scopper teaches Luffy some like powerful stuff, Luffy gets stronger, instant power boost, and then we move on to the next island. It's pretty simple, straightforward, right? Wrong! Because I actually suspect that Luffy's training partner wouldn't actually be Scopper, but the cursed Prince Loki himself. That's right. I said it, Loki. And you might be thinking that I'm crazy right now, but hear me out. Hear me out. I'm saying this every chapter. Hear me out. If there's one thing that Scopper can teach Luffy, it will be how to unlock the haki that can actually damage the Gorosei that we saw in that haki knot from Joy Boy. Because this is, of course, the secret that he needs to learn to win the final battle, and we do know that because it was clearly shown to us that haki on Joy Boy's level can actually hurt the Gorosei physically and even Imu miles and miles away. So, in my mind, this seems to be like the most obvious and main focus here. And now, keeping that in mind, Scopper even made a very specific point about sensing a weird or abnormal haki in this chapter, so to me that already could be a subtle clue here about what his training for Luffy could actually focus on. But then if you remember back to every single time that Luffy has learned haki, there isn't actually much real instruction. I mean, sure, Rayleigh taught Luffy the basics, and he also learned a little bit from Hyogoro about during the Wano prison arc, but you know, mostly it's usually all about Luffy feeling a new power more so than learning it, and then testing it out for himself in a real battle. And so what I really believe could happen here is that Luffy will see or feel this special weird type of haki, and then he will spend some time actually practicing this new power on his own. And really, what better way to practice than by sparring with another character who has been hyped up as an absolute unstoppable monster, and that we've been speculating that he might have been framed and actually might turn out to be an ally. And so to bring all of this together now, I do believe that Scopper has some sort of special plan, not just for Luffy, but for Loki too. Like, there must be a reason that he's showing the key to Luffy, and if we remember the ancient giant in the mural again, then there is a really strong possibility that Luffy will need Loki as a powerful ally for the entire final war, maybe even as a Straw Hat. I'm not sure if you're with me on this one, but I kind of feel like all of this is pointing towards the idea of Luffy and Loki training together after the conflict in Elbaf is over, and then then traveling together, hopefully. Okay, let's just leave that here. You might then be wondering, what would that even mean for Skopr Gaban then? Is he just really gonna sit around and watch? No, right? I mean, I kind of think that there is yet another role that he can play here as well, and that is to teach the rest of the Straw Hats some new powers as well. Because, I mean, let's be real, clearly Zoro...
Maybe train all the Straw Hats armament, or the ones who don't have armament. At least, bro. At least.
and Sanji do need to upgrade their abilities to keep up with Luffy as well, but even more importantly, guys, the rest of the Straw Hats do need some serious help at this point catching up with the absolutely insane monster trio. The gap is just way too big, because right now, none of them stand any chance against any of the real strong opponents that they're really likely to start facing now. Like, come on, think about it. Do you seriously think that Nami here would last a single minute against Gunko? I mean, even Frankie would very likely get absolutely low diff by the Holy Knight's arrow powers as well. So really, unless they're just not gonna fight anyone really powerful anymore going forward in the story, then I really feel like they might be needing their own long overdue power boost during this very arc as well. Fingers crossed. However, there's actually another thing that I haven't mentioned yet that could also play a major role in this possible training arc. And that is, of course, Luffy's Devil Fruit. Because with all the crazy lore about the ancient history and the role of the Sun God and all of this, there is a real possibility that someone here actually knows way more about the true powers of Luffy's Devil Fruit than Luffy even knows himself at this point. I mean, for all we know, it could even be Loki who is that person who we all assume has his own legendary Devil Fruit, or it could again be Skopper Gaban himself who learned the true history with Roger on Laugh Tale and teaches Luffy about those powers now himself. Honestly, either way, someone needs to teach Luffy that there are way more powers to his Devil Fruit than he ever realized, and what those exact powers are, we will have to wait and see, but I do certainly expect Luffy to learn some new Sun God powers in this arc, either by training with Skopper or Loki, or by fighting straight up against Shamrock and Gunko. I mean, remember, Luffy doesn't know that he has a hybrid form or a full zone transformation, all these things, right? Or I guess if Luffy wanted to shortcut it, he could unlock his new powers in the very real, very serious training method of checking out and signing up to support the channel over on my Patreon, and by doing so, even you can potentially unlock amazing Sun God powers and, more importantly, get access to a ton of really incredible artwork that we produce for this channel, like, you know, all the stuff that you see right here. It's really cool and I want to keep doing that, and for example, we have this really cool colored version of the Elbaf mural, so many other cool perks like early chapter reviews, you know, bonus content, and so on and so forth. So if you enjoy what we're doing here, you want to help us make in this chapter, please also, because even though it was fairly short, but we did get 4 chapters in a row, honestly, there were some absolutely hilarious lines between Luffy and Zoro, like literally walking away in the middle of Skopper's speech and warning, and even Nami calling Skopper a liar for leading them to a treasure room with, well, absolutely no treasure in it. Kind of love that Oda still focuses on the comedy even after all these years, and it's just one of these quintessential things that really make One Piece what it is, even with all the cool, you know, darker and more serious undertones. Also, apparently Road is just now fully on board as an ally now suddenly. I'm still kind of having to get used to that, but
Road is saying sorry.
one thing that the end of this chapter also gave us is the perfect view of a very interesting scar on the right side of Skopper's forehead. Which, I mean, man, look, I mean, I don't know if you all had the same reaction, but as soon as I saw this, my mind instantly went to man marked by flames here, because, come on, it literally looks like a flame, right? So does that confirm that Skopper is the person holding the final road poneglyph? It's so hard to say. I kind of feel like Oda is really teasing us with this very mysterious character and, you know, throwing us little pieces here and there. Could be Salt, could be Skopper, but besides the scar, we now know a few other details that could actually support the idea that Skopper is the man marked by flames. But first of all, we kind of have to address the idea that the man marked by flames supposedly sails around on this black ship with Whirlpool, so if Skopper has just been here on Elbaf, that should kind of rule him out by default, right? But since we actually do know that Skopper has been traveling in the recent past, such as when he went and visited Crocus, for example, in the cover story right here, then Skopper could very well potentially still fit that part of the rumors as well. On top of that, if there was any single location in Elbaf that would have held a poneglyph, a secret hidden treasure room under the throne could make a lot of sense, right? And so since Scarper knows about this very place, he could have possibly found it here and then had someone help him move it for him during his time in Elbaf as well. I gotta say, personally, I still really kind of like the idea that I brought up a couple of chapters ago, you know, that the road poneglyph might just straight up be hidden in the tree behind Loki, and the chained up giant is kind of blocking the entrance to a cave here. But I know I of course can't just, you know, throw that theory at you without giving you any evidence. I mean, come on, what do you think? Like, what kind of second-rate theorist do you think I am? Let's dive into what we know so far about the relationship between Scarper and Loki here. And let me know what you all think about this, but I for one really thought that there was a lot of subtle clues in this very chapter that Scarper...
Dr. Henry Loomis, this is Zora Bennett, our mission specialist. Sorry.
And Loki have had some sort of history together. For one, he just goes on and on and on about the dangers if Loki is released and how strong he is and all of that, but then he still goes and shows Luffy the key to Loki's chain. So part of me kind of thinks that Scarper knows all of those things that people say about Loki being evil are not exactly true. Like, sure, he might be dangerous and powerful and cause mayhem, but I do think that Scarper knows that that isn't exactly the full story here. In fact, I could argue that Scarper and Loki could be working together even towards some hidden goal, such as protecting a poneglyph. When you really think about it, I could see Scarper even potentially being that Mosa character that Loki was talking to a couple of chapters ago. But let's be real, you do know that I can't talk about Scarper without getting into a little bit of conspiracy mode here, because there are two really suspicious things about this entire situation. How in the world did Scarper even know about the hidden treasure room? Did he really just accidentally find it one day, or is there instead some deeper reason that he knows the secret location? And secondly, during Scarper's entire speech to Luffy, he never actually says if he tried to stop Loki before himself, because we do know he was around at that time already when Loki was rampaging, right? But all he says pretty much is that before Shanks, no one else could stop Loki. But does that include himself in there? I kind of feel like no. So if Loki really is so dangerous, why didn't Scarper himself try and lock him up? Like, he clearly already had his girlfriend and son around at the time of the Loki and Herald conflict, so wouldn't Scarper want to protect his own family from Loki, you know, rampaging through the country if everyone else was already fighting to stop him? To me, just like so many things with Loki, things don't really add up. Just like how it doesn't really make sense that Scarper didn't say anything whatsoever about that summoning circle here. Like, come on, he had to see that thing, right? It was literally right in front of him and he doesn't address it, and the fact that he didn't say anything about it to the Straw Hats kind of makes me wonder if he's seen something like this before and he knows very well what's going on. Maybe in a previous clash with the Gorosei or the Holy Knights, potentially all the way back on God Valley, for instance. Or if you wanted to go even crazier with this, what about the idea that Scarper might have actually been part of the entire conflict that left King Harold dead to begin with? Because there are a few clues that point towards that idea as well. First, Rhodes says that Ja Rule is one of the only people who know where the key is, and personally, I kind of already suspect that Ja Rule played some sort of suspicious role in that death as well. And so if Scarper also knows where the key is, then maybe he learned that information from Ja Rule, and if he and Ja Rule were working together in some way, does that make Scarper Gaban potentially a bad guy? I mean, just throwing it out there, but I could...
That agenda. Scarper Gaban is evil. Scarper Gaban is evil.
Even see a possible world where Scarper could have had a hand in Harold's death, while his true goal was actually to get into the treasure room and find the last road poneglyph. Maybe he even regrets now what happened back then, which is why he would be fine freeing Loki at this point. But there's really too much going on here that we still need to figure out, and as usual, the truth behind the Harold and Loki fight seems at this point to be the key to a lot of the mysteries we already have here in Elbaf. There is yet another alliance that Scarper could have had though, and honestly it might just be the one that makes the most sense out of everything we've talked about so far, because clearly Scarper and Shanks know each other from their time on the Roger crew, so I could definitely see those two working together and being in cahoots as well. Maybe they wanted to trap Loki so that the Giant Prince and Luffy could actually meet in the future. Maybe that's like a important condition for Luffy to becoming Pirate King, and that would actually make a lot of sense to me in my opinion. And before we move on here, I just want you to listen to this next next point. Did you notice that Scopper's scar is on the right side of his face? Because in One Piece, a really interesting fact is that most face scars and other face markings are usually on the left face side. If you want some examples, look at Luffy, Shanks, Garp, Zoro, Sabo. They all have their scars on the left side. And honestly, I could just keep going with just scars, but then there's also things like Dragon's tattoo, and even King Harold has a tattoo over his left eye, as does Kaido's right-hand man King as well. So to me, it's kind of very interesting that Scopper's is on the right side. And what's even crazier is that Scopper's old buddy Rayleigh also has a scar on the right side of his face. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail here why the left side, the left eye thing matters. It's basically part of this whole big theory I had a couple of years ago, you know, that the left eye, the left side of Jaya is actually where Laugh Tale was and it got missing and everything like that. There's a lot of reasons why this is very intentional throughout the story. So all you need to know is that this is something Oda does very intentionally, and so I do wonder what it could mean, because why in the world are the Roger Pirates the one with the only exception to this rule? Is it because of something that they learned at Laugh Tale? Because Scopper, of course, didn't have that scar before the final voyage with Roger, so I do kind of have the feeling like this must mean something. But if you have any ideas, please let me know below. I'd be like very curious if you have any ways to explain this. So with that little side tour out of the way, I now want to circle things back to yet another really shocking point in the chapter, which is when Luffy and the gang entered the throne room, they immediately saw the giant summoning circle left by Shamrock and Gunko when they randomly appeared on the island a couple of chapters ago. And maybe it's just me, but did you also freak out when you saw the thing still being there? Because I mean, it's already been some time since the Holy Knights appeared, like hours, I think. So why is this thing still there? As far as I can tell, the Gorosei circles didn't stay there in Egghead Island all the time, so why is this one still there? Well, I do think I could have an answer, and it could lead to another major battle way sooner than we might have been expecting. Because from the very start, I kind of noticed that there were some differences between this circle and the Goroseis from Egghead Islands. First one, this one you probably know, the Goroseis all had numbers inscribed in the circle, but the one here in Elbaf does of course not. Now, does that mean that this is a much more general summoning circle that does have to stay in the same spot that it first landed? Because if you remember back to when Gunko and Shamrock first arrived, it kind of looks like a lightning bolt struck the castle and made that summoning circle, but that also occurred on Egghead Island. So I'm not really sure why this one seems to be sticking around while the ones on Egghead Island apparently didn't. Whatever the answer here is, this could lead to major trouble for the Straw Hats, because we already know at this point that at least one—
Boy, I just picked my nose. I'm such a child. What the fuck? I'm being like
Holy
Luffy.
Knight is on the way, and let me know if I'm crazy here, but if I had to guess, then I would say that this third Holy Knight is probably gonna show up in the exact same summoning circle, right? Would make sense. We already saw Gunko and Shamrock use the same circle, so why wouldn't the next person arriving use that circle as well? But if that's true, then of course we'd be getting into a major fight right away very soon, because Luffy and his group are just down the staircase, and I could very easily see them coming to investigate if yet another Holy Knight uses that circle as well and suddenly appears. And who knows, maybe Scopper might even be able to sense the person's arrival like he did for Shamrock and Gunko, and I for one would absolutely love a potential clash between Luffy and this Holy Knight, because it would give us a so much better understanding of how powerful they really are, and could potentially even be a chance for Scopper to show off his true abilities, or even the secret hockey technique that could defeat characters with these demonic powers. Actually, Scopper fighting might be an even better way to power scale the Holy Knights, because we do know that he was very similar to Rayleigh in power, and we have seen Rayleigh clash with many strong characters at this point, so it would actually give us a pretty decent idea of Scopper's true powers as well. Also, a little side note here, this is actually the best view that we've ever had of the writing on these summoning circles, which kind of made me wonder if it was similar to the writing on the poneglyphs, but if you look at all of them, kind of think you can see that this is like a different language, right? These are different marks. The poneglyphs writing is much more like characters within a square, while those on the summoning circles look very much more like actual freestanding characters. So it does seem like the summoning magic language is different and older, maybe, than the language used by the Ancient Kingdom? Or at the very least, the language used on the poneglyphs. But does that necessarily make it older, or just different? I don't have the answer for you, but it could mean that the demonic powers that we've seen from the Gorosei and the Holy Knights are actually much different than anything that we've seen so far in the story. In fact, it could just be, and I'm just putting this out there because I think it would be so hype, it could be a straight up whole separate new power system. Can you imagine that? Like, how crazy would it be to get an entire brand new power system on top of Devil Fruits and Hockey at this point, this close to the end of the story? I mean, when I say this close to the end of the story, how close are we really? Probably not that close, but you get the idea. We're in the final saga. And I mean, on the one hand, I could say it's a little bit hard to see Oda actually doing that, but then on the other hand, this is also the guy who changed Luffy's Devil Fruit only recently, so honestly, who knows? But a full-on demonic power system would also be very interesting because it could lead to others learning about these powers, or who knows, maybe even other characters already have some of these demonic powers outside of the government. I'm looking at you, Shanks, or maybe even Dragon, or maybe Zoro's Ashura abilities are actually related to this demonic power system and not directly to Hockey. And who knows, just putting out there, but if this is a whole different power system, then maybe some of the characters that we know could potentially learn some demonic powers themselves. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking now about how silly it is to picture Luffy with Sun God and demon powers. So maybe more realistically, we could see someone like Brook being a really good fit for demonic abilities, that since he already has a devil fruit related to the dead. Or, I mean, I guess Robin's transformation, demonic transformation, is a little bit sus as well, because it doesn't seem super related to her devil fruit powers as well. Oh, or you know who else would be probably the perfect, now that I think about it, the perfect candidate for these powers? Someone who's already associated with darkness. Yeah, Blackbeard. Which, if he did get demon powers, then it would make the final clash between him and Luffy just the more epic. A man with multiple devil fruits and demon abilities against the true sun god. Man, what an absolutely epic fight that would be. It would truly make him the greatest villain in all of One Piece, which I have the expectation for. And if you actually want to see why Blackbeard out of all characters is the closest to beating Luffy to the One Piece and becoming Pirate King, then you can watch that video right here next to me. But as always, thanks so much for watching. Folks, Blackbeard is without any doubt the greatest villain in all of One Piece, embodying what it truly means to be a real pirate. And I know that it seems crazy since Luffy is, you know, the main character, but I genuinely do think that Blackbeard is the man right now closest to becoming Pirate King. I mean, think about it. He's terrifying, he's strong, and he's a vicious pirate who will seemingly do literally anything to accomplish his own goals. Remember, he's killed his own daddy, fought Shanks, and he's currently roaming around the sea claiming all the poneglyphs. And so I've been kind of wondering recently, how close is Blackbeard actually to finding Laugh Tale right now? Because we do know that all of the Yonko are currently hunting it down, and Shanks and Luffy are really close. I'm not gonna say they're not, but come on. Teach also has to be on the edge of glory here, right? I mean, he's the big bad man who's destined to battle Luffy in the final war. Probably, I guess. So let's really put that all to the test here and truly find out if Blackbeard has right now what it takes to claim the One Piece and what his entire plan is going to be. And there are really 5 things that I think anyone hoping to claim the One Piece and become Pirate King actually needs. And those 5 things are power, a strong crew, the poneglyphs, a way to read the poneglyphs, and then one very secret special thing that I'll talk about at the end that I think a lot of people actually tend to forget every time we talk about this. So, Teach, do you think you actually got what it takes? Huh? Alright, well, when it comes to power, Blackbeard is definitely pretty freaking strong. I mean, I think it gets overlooked a lot, but he is the guy who basically permanently scarred Shanks out of all people and is actively the man that Shanks views as the greatest threat on the ocean right now. Now, I don't know about you guys because I kind of keep forgetting about that too, but thinking about it, that's legitimately a really terrifying thought because that means that without crazy devil fruits, without god tier level Hockey, this man still has some sort of trick up his sleeve that lets him get the best of Shanks. Unless he does actually have God tier level hockey and we just have never learned about it, but would be kind of weird, right? Plus, of course, he's got to be insanely durable, or at least have something really sneaky going on that lets him survive an interaction with Shanks, who we know in general is a pretty cutthroat man and one of the all-time strongest characters in the show. Like, seriously, the dude here just stopped the Summit War by just dropping by. He's considered by Kaido to be one of the greats, and Shanks even one-shotted a 3 billion berry bounty useless kid who had just squared up with Big Mom for an entire evening weeks prior, and it was just over like that. So what I'm trying to say here is he's definitely on a level that surpasses the just average Yonko, and Blackbeard walked away from that alive. Not only that, left Shanks with a massive scar. Now, I'm gonna say I'm pretty confident that somewhere deep down beneath that weird looking face of his and his goofiness, he's got something really dark and really powerful going on next to just his darkness fruit. Like, that's for sure. But we kind of already knew that since he literally does have two of the most broken devil fruits in existence. And considering you're only allowed to have one fruit at a time without, you know, literally exploding, usually, this means that Blackbeard 100% has some sort of other special power that allows him to do that to begin with. Marco, for instance, speculates about his special body, and while we still don't know what that actually means, we do know one thing for sure. It makes Blackbeard one of the most powerful pirates in existence. Like, that dude can now rip apart the ocean and shatter entire islands with his Quake powers, and then just go ahead and create dark voids and black holes, and even negate devil fruit powers with his darkness fruit abilities as well. Plus, looking at the facts, he's actually not that bad when it comes to win-loss records either. I mean, seriously, for some reason people always think that he's a bit of a fraud, and I think it probably stems from his absence and general fear of the Seraphim and when they were introduced, and like the kind of, you know, a little bit what's the right word? Anxious side that he has to him. But as we saw, even Luffy and Zoro weren't able to just casually defeat those wicked angels when they first fought them on Egghead Island. And so when I actually went and put all the fights that Blackbeard had on paper, we can actually see here that he's capable of defeating the likes of Law, Boa Hancock, the Revolutionary Army, and then even the remaining Whitebeard pirates all together. Actually, while we're on that subject, it's still not exactly known why Blackbeard was trying to go after Boa's fruit in particular, or why he wants to be a king recognized by the world government. But based on his previous plans to become a warlord to gain access to Impel Down, well, I would just assume that he's got something really devious cooking behind the scenes once again. So I think it's pretty safe to say, Blackbeard, you've got the power of God and anime on your side. And I do think genuinely the scariest part of him is his like seemingly unlimited potential. This man keeps going after devil fruits and taking down strong fighters, and if he can actually eat a third devil fruit like a moon god fruit or a mythical zone like some theorists assume, well, he's just gonna be on a completely broken next level. Okay, but I've now established I think that Blackbeard has got the sick moves and epic powers that he needs, but none of that really matters if his crew is way too lackluster. I mean, we do know that Roger, for instance, had one of the greatest crews ever on the sea, and the man closest to the One Piece, Whitebeard, had a massive fleet capable of invading Marineford as well. Plus, it seems that Rox was someone chasing after the One Piece at some point as well, and I'm pretty confident in this based on the fact that Sengoku called him a man who committed the greatest taboo in the world. And I mean, guys, come on, I hope you agree that this word choice in particular is very specifically used in One Piece, as it's almost always used to describe the act of pursuing the true history. And we of course already know that Rox had a crew unlike any other out there, and so it goes to show that he also would have thought a powerful group was absolutely necessary to make it all the way to Laugh Tale. And ultimately, it's just obvious from the show at this point that you do need incredibly strong allies to claim the One Piece. And so the question for this video is, cards on the table, does Blackbeard actually really have the right type of crew on his side to fulfill this goal? And well, the short answer is yeah, absolutely. And I can say that without any questions. Come on, if you thought I was gonna say anything else here, I don't think you've been actually paying attention or reading the series at all, because Blackbeard's crew might just genuinely, literally be the most broken group of assembled people sailing the high seas right now, besides, like, maybe Shanks himself. And since we've already covered that red hair Shanks here doesn't seem too confident in his own abilities to defeat Teach, his crew must be a true nightmare as well. Let me just for a second talk about some of the heaviest hitters here, and I think you'll see what I'm truly talking about. For starters, he's got Van Auga here, a marksman capable of hitting targets miles and miles away and then teleporting with his Warp fruit as well. Next, something that I'm also really jealous of is that his vision seems to be absolutely perfect, seeing as he shot 3 birds from an extremely far distance and could even comment that one of them hadn't even died yet. Next up, we have also Shiryu, the former head jailer of Impel Down. Now, that job title alone I think shows that he's a really broken character, as some of the all-time strongest warriors on the ocean like Shiki, Jimbei, and even Ace were all locked up in its lowest levels, with him guarding them. And let me remind you that this guy was deemed strong enough to handle that exact level of threat. Not to mention the only other head jailer we've ever seen, Shiryu's successor, Magellan, literally just straight up bodied everyone, including Blackbeard actually, during that very same arc. Seriously, this dude probably has some beyond Admiral level strength, and we do know that Shiryu is probably on par, if not even greater in strength than Magellan is as well. On top of that, Shiryu is also just one of the stealthiest characters around, as seen by his ability to sneak around Impel Down before he even received his crazy devil fruit, the Clear fruit, which, you know, is the fruit that makes you invisible, an invisible swordsman. That's good, yeah, that's pretty good, man. Let's just give the busted sword wielder who murdered for fun the power of invisibility now. That's not broken or anything. That's probably gonna be fine. Maybe, I don't know. And I mean, at this point, we've easily seen him defeat a warlord like Ikomoria. He's more than confident enough to try and battle Garp. And then, of course, he was praised highly by Teach when they first met each other as well. In other words, he's easily one of the scariest members on the crew and easily boosts up the entire Blackbeard fleet in power by just hanging around. And if that wasn't already enough to prove that Blackbeard has a wickedly powerful crew, there's also, of course, the living battleship San Juan Wolf, a giant with the power to, you know, grow even bigger than an entire island. Oh, and then there's Katarina Devon, a mythical zone fruit user who can use their Nine-Tailed Fox Devil Fruit powers to disguise themselves as anyone that they've ever
Disguise himself as Naruto.
which now actually includes Saint Saturn after the Egghead Island arc, which I guess is now a lot less relevant now that he's dead, but I don't know, maybe it'll play a role at some point. Okay, if that maybe wasn't tickling your fancy, don't worry, because there is also Stronger. You know, the sad, pathetic horse who ate the Pegasus fruit. I mean, yeah, to be fair, they're not all winners, but hey, he brings up some pretty good comedic relief to the squad at some point, so that counts a lot. Unlike the ice-cold demon Kuzan, because seriously, this dude likes some big oppai, throwing back a few cold ones with the boys, and oh yeah, he's a former Marine Admiral capable of freezing half of an entire island. And yeah, I don't really see it talked about enough because maybe it wasn't a cover story, but this man casually took down Cracker, the Sweet Commander, and just froze all of Chocolate Town, and he's also the man who permanently turned half of Punk Hazard into a frosty wasteland. We now also know that he's got just beyond brokenly busted hockey, capable of squaring up with Garp in a one-on-one fight, and then fighting 10 days straight against the current Fleet Admiral Akainu, who has a magma fruit. He's an ice user. I mean, if he's able to use ice to hold off literal molten rock for over a week. So needless to say, Blackbeard's crew might just be the most terrifying thing about him, beside his questionable dental hygiene, that is. But more importantly, after going through all of that, I think we can all agree, hopefully guys, that Blackbeard has a group absolutely capable of claiming the One Piece and fighting with everyone on the seas. Especially when we consider that Hachinosu, his lair, is still growing in strength and numbers all the time as time goes on. Though I gotta say, little does Blackbeard know that actually I have the strongest crew known to man, and they're called the Ohara Patreons. Quick shout out, the pick, like the artists, the editors, we all of stuff over there. So yeah, because as for any treasure, you first need to find the map, which in this case is 4 giant road poneglyphs, and those are definitely one of, if not the hardest step, I think, depending on who you would ask. Next, in case for some reason you really don't know what I'm talking about, basically across the entire Grand Line there have been 4 giant red blocks that reveal together the location of Laugh-Tale, which is the final island. And according to Roger, this is where the One Piece itself is hidden, and so it does seem pretty simple at first glance, you know, find the blocks, go to the island, get the treasure. Easy peasy. Well, no, not quite. I mean, not really, unfortunately, because these blocks are hidden in truly, like, the wildest places. Like on top of Zunisha, a giant elephant who carries an entire nation on his back that is hiding one of the poneglyphs and that is just wandering through the ocean. No one knows where it is. And I've previously already touched on it, but a very important part of this problem is the fact that it seems like Roxy Zebek was someone who previously searched for the One Piece as well. And why would that be such a big issue, you ask? Well, the way I see it, the big dilemma here is that if this was the case, or possibly just because of Roger, a lot of the former Rocks pirates just happened to steal and hide the poneglyphs for themselves after Roger died. For example, Big Mom and Kaido both had a road poneglyph hidden in their territory, meaning that you previously needed to defeat 2 of the most powerful Yonko in existence to get your hands on any of these poneglyphs. And weirdly enough, Blackbeard either just couldn't seem to pull that off or just straight up didn't want to, so he was pretty high and dry for the longest time when it came to having the maps to Laugh-Tale. And so that's it, right? I mean, he's far from having all the poneglyphs and has no chance of claiming all the wealth, fame, and power. But, nope. Well, turns out he's just straight up a really evil jerk, best pirate, and just stole all of them. Or more accurately, he stole the poneglyph rubbings, which are copies of the poneglyphs that have been written down. In case you forgot, he beat Law's ass here and then took his copies of the poneglyphs from Zoe, Big Mom's, and Kaido's poneglyph during the Egghead Island incident. And that means that Blackbeard, just like Shanks and Luffy, has now 3 of the 4 necessary poneglyphs and is on the verge of claiming the One Piece. Or I guess I would say that that's the case if the final road poneglyph wasn't hidden with the mysterious man marked by flames, because he's an infamous traveler who sails the sea in an all-black ship, creating whirlpools that consume anyone who tries to come close. And seeing as nobody knows who this actually is, this part might actually be right now the biggest hurdle during the final saga for all the remaining Yonko. Shiryu and Aokiji believe that it could be a marine. Theorists have argued that it might be Dragon, or my man, Scalper Gaban, or based on Elbaf, it could also be even one of the Holy Knights. This mysterious figure here in the chapter 1121 spread about contenders for the One Piece, for example, seems to line up pretty well with the Shanks doppelganger, and seeing as there is one missing road poneglyph and this one guy is hidden, my guess is that he might be the one who has it, and that's why he's in the running right now. But all I do know is that whoever gets their hand on this poneglyph is gonna have a massive advantage to claiming the One Piece, and Blackbeard just seems to have the biggest head start here, seeing as he was the one looking for him before Wano even ever started. But as much as I hate to admit it, even getting them would still not be enough for someone to even find Laugh-Tale, because they would still need a way to translate these stones, since it was revealed that they are written in this ancient language only old Kozuki clan members like Sukiyaki here can actually read and write in, or of course Nico Robin, who studied the letters on Ohara. Meaning that without one of these insanely rare people who can read this, deciphering the map is just straight up impossible, unless you happen to have a member of the Three-Eye Tribe with you, a group of people who apparently can access the voice of all things and thus decipher the poneglyphs that way. And yep, you guessed it, you already know it, Blackbeard turns out to have one of those. He kind of stole her, you know, that dastardly pirate, and with her, he's now arguably the closest out of anyone in this double spread to finding the One Piece. Because thanks to Charlotte Pudding, who was captured by Admiral Kuzan, Blackbeard has everything someone would need on paper at least to claim the One Piece, except that one darn final missing poneglyph. I'm really feeling bad for Pudding. Like, I'm really sorry. Your powers are gonna get misused really badly, and I really only hope that Sanji can help you once this is all over, or hopefully even free you. Like, maybe if you're lucky, he'll even save you before this all turns out completely bad, but I did mention that there was actually something even more important to finding the One Piece than the first 4 steps earlier, which is gonna be our secret 5th requirement here. So, what was Manu teasing to, you know, keep the retention up? No, I think it's actually really important. It's pretty simple, actually. You need to have some real drive. And I'm not kidding here. Without a dedicated will and spirit, doing any of this is straight up impossible. And I think this point once again becomes most clear in this final cover spread of chapter 1121, where we do seem to see the 12 most likely candidates to be able to claim the One Piece. There are of course our 4 Yonko, people who do embody the will of a pirate better than anyone, so that's not a big surprise. But not only that, I think this might also be a good chance now to talk about something that's just been completely missing from this video so far, which is the will of D. Because based on the fact that Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido all did not pursue the One Piece actively, it's kind of made me wonder at this point if the will of D is also necessary to claim the One Piece. I mean, we do know that Roger actively wanted to have a child who would eventually go back to Laugh Tale, and then even married another member of the D-Clan to pull that off. Plus, ever since Imu confirmed that the D-Clan is directly tied to Joy Boy and the Ancient Kingdom, and since we know the poneglyphs are messages directly from Joy Boy, it might actually just straight up be necessary to have the will of D with you. You know, to actually use or activate whatever the One Piece truly is. And if that were to be the case, then Marshall D. Teach is definitely way closer by default to claiming this treasure than someone who isn't a D like Kuzan or Buggy. Unless Buggy D clown? Alright, I will say for now that is of course speculation, and it seems just as likely that you just basically need to have really powerful haki and a really strong drive to chase your dreams, regardless of what that is. Because as we can see, everyone else at the end of chapter 1121 here seems to have a serious level of willpower when it comes to making their goals a reality.
So tired. Peace, God bless. See you in the next video. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. And never forget to chase your dreams. Never forget to stay positive. And yeah. See you guys later. Bye bye.